Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. My name's Alex, and I'm 28 years old. For the past few years, I've been working as an IT specialist at a mid-sized tech company. The pay is decent, and I've always been pretty good at saving money. So when I hit my late 20s, I decided it was finally time to take the plunge and buy my own place. I spent months scouring real estate listings, attending open houses, and crunching numbers. Finally, I found the perfect starter home, a cozy 3-bedroom ranch house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. It needed some cosmetic updates, but the bones were good and the price was right. I put in an offer, went through the nerve-wracking process of inspections and mortgage approvals, and finally closed on the house about 6 weeks ago. The day I got the keys, I was over the moon. I remember standing in the empty living room, sunlight streaming through the windows, imagining how I'd decorate and make the space my own. I had big plans: new paint, refinishing the hardwood floors, updating the kitchen. But I wanted to take my time and do things right. For the first couple weeks, I split my time between the new house and my old apartment. I'd come over in the evenings and on weekends to start prepping for renovations, scraping wallpaper, sanding down cabinets, that sort of thing. My lease wasn't up for another month, so I figured I had plenty of time for the messiest work before fully moving in. Everything was going according to plan until about 3 weeks ago. I showed up at the house one Saturday morning, coffee and bagel in hand, ready to tackle painting the master bedroom. As I walked up the driveway, I noticed something odd. There was a beat-up old sedan parked in front of the garage that I'd never seen before. Huh, that's weird, I muttered to myself. I figured maybe one of the neighbors had visitors and they'd mistakenly parked in my driveway. Annoying, but not the end of the world. I just politely asked them to move once I figured out whose car it was. But as I got closer to the front door, my stomach dropped. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear muffled voices and movement coming from inside the house. My first panicked thought was that I was being robbed. Heart racing, I quietly set down my coffee and fumbled for my phone to call cop. Just then, a middle-aged woman with frizzy gray hair poked her head out the front door. She gave me a confused look and said, "Can I help you?" I stared at her in disbelief. This is my house. Who are you and what are you doing here?" The woman's eyes narrowed. "Your house? I think you must be mistaken, young man. This is our new home. My husband and I just moved in yesterday." My mind was reeling. What the hell was going on? "No, there's been some kind of mistake," I insisted. "I bought this house. I have the paperwork to prove it. You need to leave right now before I call the police." The woman rolled her eyes. "Oh please. We purchased this home fair and square from a lovely man named Alex Thompson. Now I don't know who you are or what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but I suggest you leave before my husband comes out here. He doesn't take kindly to trespassers." I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. Alex Thompson? That was my name. How did this woman know that? A chill ran down my spine as I started to put the pieces together. "Ma'am, I am Alex Thompson. Someone must have stolen my identity to sell you this house because I'm the rightful owner." Just then, a burly man with a scraggly beard appeared behind the woman. He glared at me menacingly. "Doris, who the hell is this guy? Is he giving you trouble?" The woman, Doris, apparently, turned to the man. "It's fine, Earl. This young man seems to be confused. He claims he owns the house." Earl's face turned red with anger. "Like hell he does. We bought this place fair and square. Now get off our property before I make you leave." I held up my hands, trying to defuse the situation. "Look, there's clearly been some kind of mistake or scam here. I have all the closing documents and the deed to prove I own this house. Why don't we all calm down and try to sort this out?" But Earl was having none of it. He came barreling toward me, jabbing his finger in my chest. "I don't know what kind of con you're trying to pull, boy, but you picked the wrong house. Now get the hell out of here before I call the cops." I stumbled backward, my head spinning. This couldn't be happening. How had these people gotten into my house? And how the hell was I going to prove it was mine without getting arrested for trespassing on my own property? I knew I needed to regroup and figure out my next move. Okay, I'm leaving," I said, backing away with my hands up. "But this isn't over. I'll be back with proof that I'm the legal owner." As I hurried back to my car, I could hear Earl shouting obscenities at me. I peeled out of the driveway, my mind racing. What the hell was I supposed to do now? My first call was to my real estate agent, Maria. I frantically explained the situation, my voice shaking. "Maria, there are people living in my house. They claim they bought it from someone using my name. What do I do?" Maria sounded as shocked as I felt. "Oh my God, Alex. That's terrible. It sounds like you may be the victim of identity theft and real estate fraud. You need to contact the police right away and file a report. I'll get in touch with the title company and see what I can find out on my end." After hanging up with Maria, I drove straight to the police station. I must have looked like a crazy person bursting through the doors and babbling about strangers in my house. But the officer at the front desk calmly took down my information and had me wait to speak with a detective. Detective Rodriguez listened patiently as I recounted the whole bizarre story. When I finished, he nodded gravely. "Unfortunately, Mr. Thompson, What you're describing sounds like a sophisticated case of identity theft and real estate fraud. It's becoming more common these days. Criminals will steal someone's identity, then use it to sell a property they don't actually own to unsuspecting buyers. The scammers get the cash, and the real owner is left to deal with the mess. My heart sank. So what do I do now? How do I get these people out of my house? Detective Rodriguez sighed. Well, it's not going to be a quick or easy process, I'm afraid. We'll need to open an investigation into the fraudulent sale. You'll want to contact your homeowner's insurance company right away too. In the meantime, do not try to forcibly remove the current occupants yourself. That could open you up to legal trouble. I left the police station feeling dejected and helpless. How long was this nightmare going to drag on? And where was I supposed to live in the meantime? Over the next few days, I was buried in a mountain of paperwork and phone calls. I had to file reports with the FTC and credit bureaus for the identity theft. I spent hours on the phone with my insurance company and mortgage lender. Maria was working overtime trying to track down information on the fraudulent sale. To make matters worse, my lease was up at the end of the week. With no other options, I had to put all my stuff in storage and crash on my buddy Dave's couch. As understanding as he was about the situation, I knew I couldn't impose on him forever. A week after my run-in with Earl and Doris, I got a call from Detective Rodriguez. Mr. Thompson, we've made some progress on your case. We were able to track down the fraudulent listing for your property. It appears it was posted on several real estate websites about a month ago. My spirits lifted slightly. That's great. So you can prove it was a scam? Well, yes and no, the detective replied. We can prove the listing was fraudulent, but we're still working on identifying who was behind it. The contact information and bank accounts used were all tied to shell companies. It's going to take some time to unravel. I slumped back on Dave's lumpy couch. So what does that mean for getting my house back? Detective Rodriguez's voice was sympathetic but firm. I'm afraid it's not that simple. The current occupants appear to be victims in this situation too. They paid cash for the property in good faith. Until we can definitively prove they were part of the scam, we can't just kick them out. I felt a surge of frustration. But it's my house. I have the deed and everything. How is this fair? I understand your frustration, Mr. Thompson, but we have to follow proper legal procedures. The good news is that we have enough evidence now to get a search warrant for the property. We'll be able to investigate further and hopefully get to the bottom of this. After hanging up, I paced around Dave's tiny apartment, trying to burn off some of my anger and anxiety. I knew the detective was just doing his job, but the injustice of it all was maddening. Those people were living in my house, probably ruining all the work I'd already put into it, and there was nothing I could do but wait. The next morning, I got a text from my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She was a sweet older lady who had welcomed me to the neighborhood when I first bought the house. The message read, "Alex, is everything okay? There are police cars outside your house." My heart started racing. This had to be the search warrant Detective Rodriguez mentioned. I quickly threw on some clothes and raced over to my street, parking a few houses down. Sure enough, there were 2 police cruisers in front of my house. I could see Earl and Doris on the front lawn, gesticulating wildly as they argued with a couple of officers. I desperately wanted to go over there and see what was happening, but I knew I needed to stay out of the way and let the police do their job. So I waited anxiously in my car, straining to catch any snippets of conversation. After what felt like hours but was probably only about 45 minutes, I saw Detective Rodriguez emerge from the house carrying several boxes of evidence. He spoke briefly with Earl and Doris, who looked increasingly agitated. Finally, the detective walked over to where I was parked and motioned for me to roll down my window. "Mr. Thompson, we've completed our initial search of the property," he said. "I'd like you to come down to the station later today to go over what we found." "Did you find proof it was a scam?" I asked eagerly. "Can I get my house back now?" The detective's expression was unreadable. "Let's discuss the details at the station. For now, I need you to continue staying away from the property. We don't want to risk any confrontations that could complicate the case." I nodded reluctantly, and watched as the police packed up and drove away. Earl and Doris went back inside my house, slamming the door behind them. I sat there for a few more minutes, a mix of hope and anxiety churning in my stomach. Maybe, finally, this nightmare was coming to an end. That afternoon, I met with Detective Rodriguez at the police station. He laid out several folders on the table between us. "Mr. Thompson, we've uncovered some very interesting evidence during our search. First, we found several documents with your personal information, social security number, date of birth, even copies of your driver's license and passport. It appears someone went to great lengths to steal your identity." I felt sick thinking about strangers having access to all my personal data. "Do you know how they got all that?" The detective shook his head. "Not yet, but we're investigating. It could have been a data breach, or someone may have gained access to your mail or online accounts. We'll need to do a full audit of your digital footprint." He opened another folder. "Now, here's where things get really interesting. We found a series of text messages and emails on Mr. and Mrs. Butler's devices, that's Earl and Doris, that strongly suggest they were aware this was a fraudulent sale." My jaw dropped. Wait, what? They knew it was a scam, but they acted like they had no idea. Detective Rodriguez nodded grimly. It appears so. From what we can piece together, they were approached by someone offering to sell them a house for well below market value, in cash, with no questions asked. The messages show they were suspicious but decided to go through with it anyway, figuring it was too good a deal to pass up. I felt a surge of anger. So they knew they were buying a stolen house? Can you arrest them? We're building a case now, the detective replied. At the very least, they'll likely face charges for receiving stolen property and possibly conspiracy to commit fraud. We're also looking into whether they were more actively involved in the identity theft aspect. He leaned forward, his expression serious. Mr. Thompson, I know this has been an incredibly frustrating and stressful situation for you, but I need you to continue being patient and let us handle this through proper channels. Can you do that? I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Yeah, I can do that. But what happens now? When can I get back into my house? We're working on getting an emergency injunction to remove the butlers from the property, Detective Rodriguez explained. Given the evidence we've uncovered, it shouldn't take more than a few days. Once that's done, you'll be able to regain possession of your house. I left the police station feeling a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. It seemed like the end was finally in sight, but I knew better than to get my hopes up too high. I'd learned the hard way how quickly things could go sideways. True to the detective's word, things moved quickly after that. 2 days later, I got a call informing me that a judge had granted the injunction. The butlers were being forcibly evicted from my house, effective immediately. I raced over to the property, arriving just in time to see Earl and Doris being escorted out in handcuffs. They glared daggers at me as the police led them to waiting cruisers. I felt a mix of satisfaction and pity watching them go. They'd made their own bed with their greedy choices, but I couldn't help feeling a twinge of empathy for how badly they'd screwed up their lives. As soon as the police gave me the all-clear, I cautiously entered my house for the first time in weeks. I was horrified by what I found inside. The place was an absolute disaster zone. It looked like Earl and Doris had been living like pigs, with garbage and dirty dishes strewn everywhere. The walls were covered in grimy handprints, and there was a pervasive smell of cigarette smoke that made me gag. Worse, they seemed to have taken out their anger on the house itself once they realized the jig was up. There were holes punched in the drywall, broken fixtures, and what looked suspiciously like urine stains on the carpets. My heart sank as I wandered from room to room, cataloging the damage. All the work I'd already put into fixing up the place was completely undone, and then some. I slumped down on the stairs, feeling utterly overwhelmed. How was I ever going to afford to fix all this? My savings were already depleted from the down payment and initial renovations. I buried my face in my hands, fighting back tears of frustration. Just then, I heard a gentle knock at the still open front door. I looked up to see Mrs. Chen, my kindly next-door neighbor, peering in with a concerned expression. "Oh, Alex," she said softly. "I'm so sorry about everything that's happened. Is there anything I can do to help?" Her simple offer of kindness was enough to open the floodgates. I found myself pouring out the whole story to her. The identity theft, the fraudulent sale, the weeks of stress and uncertainty. Mrs. Chen listened patiently, clucking her tongue in sympathy. When I finished, she squeezed my shoulder gently. "You poor dear, what a terrible ordeal you've been through. But you listen to me, you're not alone in this. We take care of our own in this neighborhood." Before I could ask what she meant, Mrs. Chen was already pulling out her phone. "I'm calling the neighborhood association right now. We'll get a crew together to help you clean up this mess. And I know my son is a contractor. I'll see if he can give you a good deal on the repairs." I was speechless, overwhelmed by her kindness. "Mrs. Chen, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much." She waved off my thanks. "Nonsense, dear. It's what neighbors do. Now, let's see about getting this place back in order, shall we?" True to her word, within a couple of hours, a small army of neighbors had descended on my house. They came armed with cleaning supplies, trash bags, and unflagging energy. I was amazed by their generosity and community spirit. As we worked, I learned more about what had transpired while Earl and Doris were squatting in my house. Apparently they'd made quite an impression on the neighborhood, and not in a good way. There were stories of loud arguments at all hours, suspicious characters coming and going, and a general air of hostility towards anyone who tried to be neighborly. "We all knew something wasn't right," explained Bob from across the street as we hauled out bags of trash, "but we couldn't prove anything. We're just glad you're back, and those troublemakers are gone." By the end of the day, the house was looking considerably better. It wasn't perfect. There was still significant damage that would require professional repairs, but at least it was clean and livable. As the last of the neighbors trickled out, I found myself getting a bit choked up. Their kindness and support had turned one of the worst days of my life into something unexpectedly heartwarming. Over the next few weeks, the legal process played out. Earl and Doris were formally charged with multiple felonies related to the fraudulent house purchase. They were facing significant jail time, especially since this wasn't their first run-in with the law. It turned out they had a history of scams and petty crimes across several states. The police were also able to identify the mastermind behind the identity theft and fraudulent listing. It was a sophisticated criminal ring that had pulled similar scams in several cities. While they hadn't caught everyone involved yet, they had enough evidence to shut down the operation and prevent more people from being victimized. As for me, I was slowly putting my life and my house back together. Mrs. Chen's son had indeed given me a great deal on the repairs, and my homeowner's insurance ended up covering a significant portion of the damage. It would take time, but I was confident I could restore the house to the cozy home I'd originally envisioned. More importantly, I'd gained something I never expected out of this ordeal: a true sense of community. My neighbors had rallied around me in my time of need, and I was forming genuine friendships with many of them. What had started as a nightmare was evolving into a weirdly positive turning point in my life. One sunny Saturday, about 2 months after regaining possession of my house, I was out front planting some new shrubs when Mrs. Chen came over, a covered dish in her hands. "Alex dear," she called out, "I brought over some of my famous dumplings. I thought you might be hungry after all that yard work." I straightened up, wiping sweat from my brow. "Mrs. Chen, you're too kind. Thank you so much." She beamed at me. "It's my pleasure. You know, I'm so glad you're here. This neighborhood needed some young blood, and you're just the kind of homeowner we like to see." As we chatted, I looked around at the quiet street, the well-kept lawns, the neighbors waving as they walked their dogs or played with their kids. For the first time since this whole crazy situation began, I felt a deep sense of peace and belonging. "You know what, Mrs. Chen?" I said, smiling. "I'm glad I'm here too. It may not have been the smoothest start, but I have a feeling this is exactly where I'm meant to be." She patted my arm affectionately. "Of course it is, dear. Now come inside and have some dumplings before they get cold. And while we eat, you can tell me all about your plans for that backyard of yours. I have some ideas." As I followed Mrs. Chen inside, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. My journey to homeownership had been far more dramatic and stressful than I ever could have imagined. But in the end, it led me to exactly where I needed to be. Not just in a house, but in a true home, surrounded by a community that had my back. The whole experience had taught me valuable lessons about resilience, the importance of community, and the unexpected ways life can surprise you. As I sat down to enjoy Mrs. Chen's dumplings, I felt a surge of gratitude for my new life and the strange, twisted path that had brought me here. Sure, I still had a lot of work ahead of me to get the house exactly how I wanted it, and I knew I'd be dealing with the fallout of the identity theft for a while. But for the first time in months, I was excited about the future. This house and this neighborhood were where I belonged, and no scammer or squatter could ever take that away from me again. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.